Very warm welcome to our This News Hour. I'm Solomon Danye. Thanks for joining me. Ethiopia's parliament yesterday approved two draft bills referred to it. One of these, which made it to the floor of the 547-seat parliament, is the agreement between Ethiopia and Russia for safe and peaceful use of nuclear weapons. The House approved the bill unanimously after scrutinizing the details presented to it by the Foreign and Peace Affairs Standing Committee. The draft bill is said to be instrumental in elevating the bilateral ties between the two nations, over and above helping speed up knowledge transfer. In another development, the Legislative Assembly also approved a draft bill regarding the Code of Conduct in working relations between the federal government and the states, presented to it by the Legal, Justice and Democracy Affairs Standing Committee. The bill is said to be helpful to create a more integrated working relationship between the federal government and the 11 states of the Republic. The government of China officially handed over the first Ethiopian remote sensing satellite ETRSS-1 to Ethiopia on December 2, 2020. At the ceremony held under the auspices of China Academy of Space Technology in Beijing, Ethiopian ambassador to China Teshome Toga said Ethiopia is grateful to the government of China for relentlessly supporting the country's aspiration to see a better future with the utilization of advanced technology. The Vice Minister of Ecology and Environment of China, Liu, also made a remark commending Chinese and Ethiopian professionals who've done their level best to see the satellite project succeed and meet its objectives. In an exclusive interview with TRT World, State Minister for Foreign Affairs Redwan Hussein said Ethiopian government is ready to build shelters in the border areas, citing the government's commitment to return Ethiopian refugees from Sudan. Redwan added fighters loyal to the TPLF clique are surrendering to the National Defense Force following Army's full control of Mekelle. Jerusalem has more from TRT World.
Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed declared a victory over the weekend to the Ethiopian people over the full control of Mekelle city by the National Defense Force. Redwan reaffirmed that many of the militia and special force of TPLF have been surrendering to the National Defense Force after Mekelle is seized by the federal government.
The major military operation, as the Prime Minister has just said yesterday for the Parliament, is over, and the TPLF clique, who's been controlling the entire Tigray, has lost its control within 3 weeks of operation. And then the last three days, even lost Mekelle. Many of the militia and special forces of Tigray, they have been surrendering to our defense forces in their thousands. And the upper echelon has left Tigray and retreated to some about villages in 45 kilometers away from Mekelle. And our forces have been tracking down. We know the defense forces have actually found out their hideouts. And it's a matter of days since many of them would be captured, because some of the senior leadership has already been handing over to the government. Now, one of the 9 executive committee members, which was the former Speaker of House of Federation, handed herself to our defense forces yesterday. And then they're going to continue surrendering.
Redwan also took time to disprove the malicious propaganda of TPLF that the government has put a communication ban to journalists to report on the actual place to deny the truth.
Journalists are actually being allowed to areas which are a little bit safer. Now, in some cities and towns which were actually controlled by TPLF, now unfettered from their grip, journalists, both domestic and foreign journalists, are allowed to report. In some cities and towns, because you can still have some individuals who've been mingling with the society and try to just do something nasty. So for their own safety, now journalists are not allowed, even our own ones, because it's only embedded journalists with the defense forces who can go to the front areas. But in some areas now, what remains is immanent, a police work to just stand for culprits. And then until that is over, so it may not be safe for journalists to go. But otherwise, in the cities which are now free from TPLF forces, we are allowing, as just showing this picture, it was actually held by TPLF forces. Now, journalists are actually allowed to go and report from those areas.
According to Redouan, activities are underway to support people who live in safety net program in Tigray state and to return Ethiopian refugees who fled to Sudan into their home country.
There are about 1 million and more than 1 million Tigray Ethiopians who used to live on safety net, and then the government is aware of the need. There was actually in store food which would run for about two months. But the fleeing TPLF forces, they looted both the medicine and also food items. Now, the government sent two batch of fact-finding mission from both sides, from the western and eastern side of Ethiopia. Ethiopia have been hosting nearly 1 million refugees from surrounding countries, neighboring countries. And we've actually relocated back internally displaced Ethiopians since the last 3 years. Out of violence, nearly about 3 million Ethiopians. So Ethiopia is capable of handling such kind of difficulties. Those who cross to Sudan are only about 40,000. And then it is easier for Ethiopia. Now, we are going to build some shelters in the border areas. So we're going to also go and convince them to come back to their home country, to come back to their village. No refugee village would be as comfortable as your home.
Currently, the government is trying to rebuild the infrastructure that TPLF army has destroyed and help restore normalcy in the region.
We don't confuse a country and a government. We want you to understand that. Not today, even 100 years ago. We gave our neck to be free from colonialism. Victory is Ethiopia. No individual will sell his or her country for their benefit. We love peace, we work for peace, and you have to understand that. And if you understand what's ours, you should collaborate with us. No matter poverty we're in, will not give in our pride to others. Don't blame us. It's not our fault. This is in our blood, transmitted from our fathers. Well, money will not pressure us. You can only work together with us. You cannot win Ethiopia when you have Ethiopians living here.
Press Secretary for the Office of the Prime Minister, Bilene Siyum, said the operation in Tigray did not cause any collateral damage. She also rejects the blame by TPLF for the communication blackout in the region. Bilene said the cutoff on communication happened following the attack on the Northern Command by TPLF itself, recalling the need to be cautious over fake news fabricated by the group. Goshmal presents the story as follows.
TPLF has held a prominent position in Ethiopian politics for nearly 3 decades until Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed took office in 2018. The tension between the federal government and Tigray region erupted when the federal government postponed the 6th general election in fear of coronavirus, but TPLF held election defying the central government. The TPLF clique attacked the Northern Command station in Tigray incidentally while they fall asleep. TPLF also committed genocide in Maikadra. The defeated junta is now fabricating false information and confusing the people, claiming the federal government has not taken control key places in Tigray. Talking to Charity World, Bilene Siyum, press secretary for the Office of Prime Minister, said Mekelle city is under the command of federal forces.
Those are fabricated. According to the federal government, one of the key strongholds was Mekelle city, and Mekelle city has been under the command of the federal forces for the past few days. That means with the seizure of Mekelle city, the military intervention has come to an end. So all of the cities and key towns within the Tigray region are now under the federal command.
Billene told that the law enforcement operation is being done cautiously to avoid civilian casualties.
They need to be able to substantiate it with their data, but according to the operation that the National Defense Forces have undertaken, and we've said this before, the reason that it has taken more than 3 weeks or close to 3 weeks to finalize this rule of law operation had to do with the rough terrain that the National Defense Forces had to weather. In addition to the rough terrain, a lot of infrastructure had also been damaged by the TPLF militias as they were receding or as they were running away from the National Defense Forces. So one of the primary reasons of the way that the National Defense Forces have been avoiding cities and towns is to ensure that there was no civilian casualties, that the people of Tigray will not come under any harm due to something that was instigated by the TPLF forces.
TPLF's blame for communication blackout is unacceptable, said Billene. The problem happened as a result of the attack on the army base, she noted. She assured that the communication is being restored in certain parts of Tigray.
I think the world has been misled by the TPLF clique in the sense that they have been blaming the federal government for a communication blackout. On the late evening of November 3rd, when they attacked the Northern Command, they needed to make sure that the Northern Command was not going to be in touch with the headquarters in Addis Ababa, so they cut off communications line as a result of that, and then quickly turned it around on the federal government, insinuating that the federal government was behind that. Now, there are certain parts of Tigray where communication is being restored. In fact, most of Tigray region has sustained heavy damages on communication infrastructure due to TPLF's really irresponsible act. This is public infrastructure. This is infrastructure that has been serving the people of Tigray as well and serving the country as a whole.
The federal government is working aggressively to return and reinstate refugees, Billene noted.
Different opposition political parties have expressed support to the law enforcement measures taken by the federal government. Controlling the city of Mekelle, the federal government claimed victory against TPLF and said it is finalizing the law enforcement operation in Tigray. Emmanuel Jorge reports.
The law enforcement operation in Tigray is highly commended by some opposition political parties in Ethiopia. Talking to ETV, politicians expressed support to the government's measures, suggesting the need to restore law and order in the country. The Ethiopian government claimed victory against TPLF and said it is finalizing the law enforcement operation in Tigray.
The government's measure to restore peace and order, and of course to save the unity and the integrity of the nation is very appropriate. And of course, we as a national movement of Amhara have fully supported this measure from the very beginning.
I would like to appreciate the patience of our government in handling the unduly character of the TPLF junta in the last 3 years. It was so patient, so wise, and this emanated from the character that it had respect to the Tigrayan people. So, as a party, we appreciate and support what our government did, and we also appreciate the sacrifices paid by our armed force members to liberate the Tigrayan people.
As an opposition political party, IZEMA has been saying from the start, we as people and even as politicians, we only have one country, which is Ethiopia, and on any issue that is concerning the country, on national defense, on the peace and stability of the country, on many areas, we have been saying we are willing to work with any stakeholder in the country. We support the actions being taken by the government, and we consider these actions as law enforcement actions against an aggressor, which is an internal aggressor. So we support this action being taken by the government.
The opposition political parties say that the allegation by the TPLF clique as if the federal government is imposing a humanitarian crisis on the Tigrayan people is far away from the truth, and the government did its best to safeguard the civilians in the operation.
Now, there is some kind of misinformation and the propaganda which is going on by TPLF, especially in the international media, which is, attempting to gain sympathy by portraying it as a humanitarian crisis on Tigrayan people. No, government measures in Tigray are very, very reserved, and of course, as the Prime Minister and the generals themselves have admitted, no single incident had happened. In the capture of Mekelle, for instance, the civilian casualty is very minimal.
We have seen many precautions being taken by the government on this area. The government has been saying from the very beginning that we will take every possible measure to protect civilians and civilian properties. And from many sources, we have confirmed that the government is taking due respect for civilian lives and civilian properties.
The extraordinary and plenipotentiary of Ethiopia to Algeria, Ambassador Nebiat Getachew, told Radio Algeria International that the National Army has liberated many places in Tigray and commenced the final offensive against the renegade junta. The ambassador underscored law and order enforcement operation of the federal government in Tigray is an internal issue that should be dealt with in the constitutional mandate of the federal government of Ethiopia.
The operation had a very specific objective of restoring constitutional order and ensuring the rule of law in the region by putting an end to impunity. The operation started on November 4 and it lasted almost for 3 weeks. It started following the treasonous act of the rogue element of the TPLF, which is the Tigrayan People's Liberation Front, that against the northern command of the Ethiopian National Defense Forces. The Ethiopian National Defense Forces had one of the biggest bases in the Tigray region, and this is the National Army's huge asset, and this was attacked by this clique, this rogue element of the TPLF, and this has caused the law and order operation of the government. The military operation was successfully concluded on November 28, and the remaining job is to apprehend the culprits and restore full law and order and rehabilitate the region and provide humanitarian work and access to the people who live in the Tigray region.
Ambassador Nebiat also added that the heinous attack of the rogue TPLF to internationalize the domestic issue has been thwarted by Eritrea's non-interference in Ethiopia's domestic affairs.
The TPLF junta had fired rockets into the Eritrean, which is a neighboring country, with a view to internationalize the conflict. And they had a very clear intention of internationalizing this conflict by trying to draw in Eritrea into the conflict. For us, this is clearly an internal matter and an internal situation that could be handled by the able Ethiopian National Defense Forces in restoring law and order in the country. So, the Eritrean government has also not responded to this ill intention of the TPLF junta to draw in, to bring it into this conflict. So it has entirely been handled within the Ethiopian territory by to draw in Eritrea into the conflict, because it's Eritrea and this particular region of northern Ethiopia shares an international border. But this attempt was thwarted by Eritrea, framing the situation as an internal matter that could be handled by the able.
ሳተናው ጀነራል በላይ ልብ ቆራጡ ጀነራል መሰለ የመጀመሪያ የመከላከል ስራ በጎንደር በኩል በሁመራ በኩል ያለውንና ሁመራ የመያዙን ስራ ከሌሎች ጓደኞቻቸው ጋር ሆነው ነው የመሩት። ትንታጉ ጀነራል አበባው በምዕራብ ግንባር ወደ ተኮምቢያ የወጣውን የኢትዮጵያ ወታደር አደራጅቶ አስታጥቆ እነዚህን ይዞ ሽራሮ እንዲቆጣጠር ጀነራል አበባው ሚሽን ተሰጠው። ጀነራል በላይና ጀነራል መሰለ ሁመራን ከያዙ በኋላ አድጎሹን ይዘው ተከዜን ተሻግረው ሽራሮ ላይ ከጀነራል አበባው ኃይል ጋር እንዲቀላቀሉ ተደረገ። ይህ ኃይል ተደምሮ ነው ሽሬን የያዘው አክሱምን የያዘው። በራማና እዛ አካባቢ በነበረው ውጊያ ጀነራል ባጫ ነው ያደራጀው። የጀነራል ባጫ ሚሽን ወደ እንጥጮ የሚሄደውን ወደ አድዋ የሚሄደውን ቦታ መጀመሪያ ምሽጋችንን መያዝና ሽሬ ሲጠጋ ያኛው ኃይል አድዋን መቁረጥ ነው። በዛላምበሳ በኩል ግስላው ጀነራል ጌታቸው የወጣውን ኃይል አደራጅቶ በከፍተኛ ጀግንነትና ቆራጥነት ዛላምበሳና አዲግራት እንዲይዝ ነው ምሽት የተሰጠው።